Hey, I'm Jono, and this is Collaya. In this video, I'm going to give you a high-level tour of Collaya's features. Collaya is a creative partner that lives right inside your DAW. It knows your session, your sounds, your gear, and it's there to help you write and finish your best material. The key distinction here is that while Collaya does use AI and machine learning technologies, it isn't really a make music for you type app. It's a co-producer. So it works with your ideas, your sounds, and your creative direction. Collaya runs as an AU-VST plugin or a standalone app on the Mac, and it's the same experience either way. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so here we see Collaya running as an AU plugin in Ableton, but again, you could run it as an AU-VST plugin in any DAW that supports AU-VST plugins on the Mac. From left to right, we see this is the chat panel here. I'll go into detail of what these features are in a minute. Here's the info panel, which gives you handy information on anything that you hover the cursor over. You'll get to learn more about what that feature is. The other thing to note about the info panel, for assets, it gives you all of the information that Collaya is understanding about that asset when you hover over the name of the asset there. This is the Dropzone. This is where you can drop assets into Collaya, and it will automatically import them into your assets folder. Here's the assets panel. There's a lot going on here, and I'll get into more detail in a minute, but just know for right now, this is the assets panel. This is where you search for assets, and this is where you'll see your assets show up when you import them. Now, here's the studio panel. The studio panel is the result of when you run that scan during setup. It scans your whole system, and it shows you everything that it found here. Nice thing about this is that you can actually hide certain things if you go into this hide mode, and you can also search for any sort of plugin or DAW or audio or MIDI hardware here. You can select items to chat about them. So if you have questions about certain plugins or a DAW or a piece of hardware, you can select that item and ask Collaya a specific question about that item or how it may pertain to the song that you're working on at the moment. Down at the bottom here is a sound strip. To the left, you can see your sampler settings, and to the right, you can see your volume control. Lastly, this top part. We can see there's MIDI coming in from Ableton Live, and it's reading the project BPM. There's also sync right here. Turning this off will prevent these assets from syncing. Turning it on will sync those assets. This is latch mode. This basically means that when you have this enabled and you play an asset, it will wait for the bar in order to start playing that asset. With both sync and latch enabled, you have time-synced assets so that you can quickly audition your assets as you're trying to find the right asset as it pertains to your project. There's also help and settings. Okay, the heart of the experience is chat. You can ask anything about your musical ideas, production advice, mixing questions, songwriting ideas, troubleshooting. It all happens here in this chat window. What's really interesting about this, and sort of different from other chat experiences, is that Collaya has an awareness of what's happening within your DAW. So you can see up here, it understands that it's obviously instantiated within Ableton Live. At 96 BPM, 4/4 is my time signature, and right now the playhead is stopped. If I hit play here, you can see that now it sees that Ableton is playing, and it's giving me that indicator. There's a few other things going on here that I'll get into in a bit. Just know that Collaya is aware of what's happening in your DAW. Therefore, you can ask questions contextually about what's happening, what you're thinking about within your DAW. And at a very minimum, it'll know your BPM and time signature. And depending on what the DAW is and what Collaya's understood about it, it may understand a lot more than just tempo and time signature. If you're using an Ableton, we have a little additional Ableton install script that allows Collaya to understand things like track names, devices, and plugin chains. So even if you're not running it in Ableton, Collaya understands a lot about what you're doing based on your assets and your studio scan. You can include specific assets within chat context and plugins or other devices, which is really helpful when you're trying to develop a certain sound and you might need help with a synth patch or a plugin idea or a melody idea with a plugin. Conversations are what we call sessions, and those are organized here. You can organize sessions into projects if you want to group those together. This happens to be an empty project because it's a fresh install, but anytime you're thinking about going back in history, it would be right here. You can also search there. So we talked about how to add assets and studio devices to your session. However, let's take those off right now, and I'm just going to start a new chat here. And I'm going to say I'm working a down tempo song. What kind of progression would give it a dreamy feel? What kind of chord progression would give it a dreamy feel? Okay, so it says for dreamy down tempo, you want progressions that avoid strong resolution. What's interesting is this next paragraph, it mentions my recent playing is in D minor. The reason why it knows what I played is because I have follow mode enabled. So it's given me a set of notes. Also interesting to note that it's also picked up my BPM, as we talked about, and it's also giving me some voicing options as well if I want to get a little bit more complex with the basic foundational set of notes. From here, I could say, if I'm just quick and dirty, I could play that stuff, or I could say, give me some MIDI clips of this note progression. Give me some MIDI clips of this note progression. And it gave me a couple of options here. Two different options that may sound a little bit different. These are actual MIDI clips that I can play from Collaya. And this is where it'll use the sampler that I mentioned earlier. The sampler has a number of different presets here, but it defaults to grand piano. And that actually works really nicely for this clip that we've generated here. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. But note, it's waiting because we have latch mode enabled. So latch mode basically is just waiting until the DAW transport starts. And once the DAW transport is playing, that's when Collaya will start so that everything syncs up and starts at the same time. Let's have a listen. So again, it's using the grand piano preset. There are a few other sampler presets in here to experiment around if you're trying to get a certain sound. But really the idea is just almost kind of a gestural thing, just so you can understand the notes or the melody that's being played. We can hear those chords in there ringing out there. Piano actually works really nicely for that type of thing. But that's pretty much it. Save this clip, and you can then drag that clip into your DAW and have any MIDI instrument play that clip. All right, let's talk about follow mode. So right now you can see I have follow mode enabled here, and I have some notes here. These are from notes that I was playing previously, but basically you can watch here and see as I'm playing chords, it sees those notes come in, right? So right. Now, this is where things get a little magical. When I open this, you can see that it's basically retained all of those notes that I've been playing throughout this whole session. Beyond that, it's also found some interesting chunks within here. It's found different things that I've done that it thinks may be relevant to song ideas or note ideas here. So I can play back these sections, or I can grab a section. I can add to chat context if I want to chat about one section of notes that might be interesting that I might want to iterate on. I can generate a variation of those notes. I can drag it to the DAW, or I can add it to my assets to save to work with later. There's quite a few other options here, but that's the high-level gist of follow mode. All right, let's talk about your assets and your sound library here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just hide this studio panel so I can see more of my assets here, and I'm going to drag this around. Now, keep in mind that the UI is malleable. You can move things around, and it should remember that state when you want to come back to it. So here I have a number of MIDI clips and some audio clips here, and everything is searchable. I can add new assets by dragging and dropping audio from your DAW and audio or MIDI from the Finder. It's a little bit tricky when you were talking about dragging MIDI from the DAW, as this is just a limitation that a lot of DAWs have. But at a very minimum, I can grab audio from my DAW and just drag it right into Collaya, and there it is there, right? Notice that when I drag this asset into Collaya, it gives me a little cloud icon, and then it's thinking about stuff. This is an indicator that's saying it's thinking about what's happening with this particular asset, it's running analysis on it. So it's thinking about not just the BPM and key, which show up almost instantly here, but also the sound characteristics, the what we call the vibe. And now if I hover over here, you can see it's got this crisp, driving, synthetic vibe to it. It's it sees it as a drum loop that is drum and bass because of some of the characteristics of the drums, and it sees it as an intense, energetic drum. Now let's grab some more assets so I can show you import from the Finder. With assets, there's a folder in the Finder that you can do a lot of this work directly in. There's many ways to get to that folder, but I can go ahead and look at this three-dot menu here and say Reveal Folder in Finder, and it basically opens this window here. That's your Collaya folder here. Now, during setup, you can specify where you want that folder to be if you want it to be elsewhere and not just /music/Collaya. You can have it be anywhere else on your system, but this is where that folder is. There's a few things going on with this folder. This folder is constantly being watched by Collaya Connect, and so if you add assets to this folder, they automatically get imported into Collaya, and they're shown here within the plugin or within the app. So right now, you can see this is very much a similar representation of what we see here. It's basically the same list. I'm going to go ahead and grab some other sounds. I've got some cool guitar sounds here. I've got some cool drum beats here. I'm going to go ahead and grab those and just drag them into Collaya. Now, looking at Collaya, it added them here, and you can see they're importing automatically here as well. And it's giving me those indicators again to show me that those files are being analyzed. So now those items have all been analyzed, and we can look at some of these and see what Collaya heard in terms of what they are and how they work. I can also go ahead and grab something for chat context, add it to chat context here, and say, I'd really like to work with these drums in this song. Collaya is aware of the fact that it is a bit of a mismatched tempo, bit of a mismatch in vibe, essentially. Okay, so it says, cool, it's an almond break, and it's this BPM. It gives you this information, and it says, this is like great for halftime, 96 BPM instead of the 165. So that actually may work out really nicely. One thing to keep in mind, the key analysis is A major. Almond style breaks are essentially rhythmic, but it's still got a bit of some of the tonality of the drums there. So just kind of showing you that it gives you options then of kind of what to do next with these drums, kind of unlocking some ideas, hopefully. You can also sort and filter however you want. You can also display some of these other columns here if it's relevant to you. And again, keep in mind, you can always search. The last thing I want to show you on this plugin within this project here is Listener. Listener is a separate plugin that works in concert with the Collaya plugin in order for Collaya to hear certain sounds and frequencies. Right now, you can see in this UI, it says 2 listeners, and when I look at that, it says breaky drums and drum spillage. Well, let's go ahead and look at breaky drums. If I look at breaky drums in Ableton, you can see right here, there's this listener, and when I open that plugin up, it shows a very basic UI that's just showing frequencies and the output here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this channel. Collaya is hearing those frequencies and essentially communicating with the main plugin here that there's those frequencies happening. Note that I also have a listener plugin on this channel here, other drum channel. I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this one. And let's see. I'm going to turn on that plugin. Now, you can't really hear it because the volume's low, but there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of competing frequencies. So let's take a look at this. Here's the drum spillage, and here's the breaky drums. These two together, and there are competing frequencies. So what does that mean? Well, if I go to Insights, it's giving me real-time feedback of what it's hearing in terms of frequencies. This is giving me mix input right away. So it's saying basically, here's these 2 channels and here's how they are competing. And if I'm not sure about something or I'm confused about how this works, I can ask Collaya. So I can hit stop and say, hang on. Say, okay, there's combined sub low energy. You can see that sub's still ringing out, right? So I can say, I'm just going to ask Collaya about this. Tell me more about this. I don't understand. You're telling me there's low end congestion. What does that mean? And I can also tailor that prompt if I wanted to. So when I asked Collaya about this, tell me more about this. All right, now Collaya said, that's a heads up. It's worth addressing that your frequencies are essentially competing with each other. And it'll basically see, based on the plugins that I have, it knows that I have FabFilter installed, so it'll give me input on how to use FabFilter to fix some of these frequency collisions. It's asking if I want to walk through a drum bus. Yeah. That would be cool. Great. So I said yes, and it says here's a clean drum bus chain that'll glue 2 tracks together. So here it's giving me a drum bus that happens to be entirely of FabFilter plugins. I can say give me another drum bus which uses my UAD plugins. So it's thinking about which plugins I have installed. So here it says here's a UAD forward version of the same bus concept where it's recommending still that FabFilter for cutting the frequencies, and then bus compression, the UAD SSLG bus, and a couple of other things in there as well. It's still giving me a FabFilter limiter. I'm going to say, what about a UAD limiter? What about a UAD limiter instead of a FabFilter limiter? Both great plugins, but let me just see what we can get here. So then it's recommending some of the UAD plugins that I have installed for limiters. This is great. Recommendation is this, the Oxford limiter. The bottom line is having the Collaya Listener plugin running on whatever channels you might need a little bit of mix help with. It's almost like having a second set of ears which don't get tired. Collaya is your creative partner that lives inside your DAW. Chat, generate MIDI ideas, preview sounds in context, manage your library, follow your playing in real time, and get mixing insights, all without leaving your session. Available on the Mac for Apple Silicon, and it works with Ableton, Logic, GarageBand, any other Mac DAW that supports AUVST. There's a free 14-day trial, no credit card required, and then after the 14-day trial, there's still a free version. It's just quite limited. If you haven't already, download it at Collaya.com and try it on your next session. We can't wait to hear what you create with Collaya by your side.